This regular meeting of the Detroit Lake City Council is called to order. And at this time, I'd like to invite all of you to please stand and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the regular City Council meeting held December 10th and the annual City Council meeting held January 7th, 2020. Is there anyone in the audience or any member of the council that wishes to make any changes or corrections to the minutes of the regular City Council meeting or the annual City Council meeting? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion for their approval.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes of the regular council meeting and the annual city council meeting, the December regular meeting and the January annual city council meeting. Discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. The consent agenda is before the council, and all items with an asterisk are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or a citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered separately in its normal sequence on the agenda. Is there anyone in the audience or any member of the council that wishes to either remove or add an item to the consent agenda? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. Motion's made and seconded. Discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Karen Bubolz was going to be here from M-State, but she's ill this evening and is unable to attend. And so with that, I'll adjourn the regular meeting and call to order a public hearing to receive public comments in the matter of street and drainage improvements for Washington Avenue South. And before I get into the comments or questions, I would call on our city engineer, John Pratt.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We'll run through kind of the typical presentation that we do for these types of street and utility reconstruction projects. This one's for South Washington Avenue. Maybe that's better. For South Washington Avenue from Willow Street down to just short of Westlake Drive. And then we've also got some side streets that we'll be working on as part of the project. A little bit of Willow from Washington over to about the alley, and then Forest Street from Washington to Lake. So, but primarily South Washington Avenue. So what we're here for, or why, is the city is looking at utilizing special assessments as a financing mechanism or a funding mechanism for a portion of the project costs. So as a result of that, under state statute 429, we're required to have a public hearing on the project and sort of go through some of those pieces. I'll go over some of the existing conditions, project need, talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing with the project, some of the options that we're looking at, project costs, funding, little bit about some of the project schedule, and then there'll be an opportunity at the end for some questions and input and things like that. So again, Washington Avenue, here's a picture of the project area, all of South Washington from Willow to Westlake Drive. Again, a block of forest just west of Washington, the Willow intersection, and then we'll also be doing the alley along the west side of Washington Avenue between Willow and Forest, and then actually just a little bit further south of Forest. A little background, this is a cooperative project with the city and Becker County. Washington Avenue is a county highway. It's been on both the city and the county's capital improvement plan for a number of years now, mostly because the street was starting to deteriorate to the point that we knew we were going to need to do something with it sooner than later. November of 2017, we applied for what's called LRIP funding, or Local Road Improvement Program funding. We were awarded a grant, the county technically was, in October of 18. So about a year after we applied, we got $1 million grant to help with the reconstruction costs. So that leads us to the fall of this past year in 2019. We began the preliminary design phase of this. The council adopted the preliminary engineering report in December, and that lands us where we are tonight at a public hearing. So existing need, the driving force on this is the condition of the street. Washington Avenue is getting quite rough. It was reconstructed in 1996, which unfortunately was not all that long ago, just a little over 20 years ago. So we didn't get a ton of mileage on it, but it is a roadway we need to keep in fairly good condition. So the original alley, we don't know when that was built. It's quite old. But in both cases, the surfaces are in pretty poor condition, poor ride quality, things of that nature. Signals at Washington and Willow are also just over 20 years old. There's a lack of some functionality in those signals. They're supposed to detect when cars are pulling up and things like that. I don't think some of those functions are working, so it kind of defaults to a timed operation. It's not ADA compliant in a couple different ways. The intersection of Willow and Washington overall functions fairly well during most times. There are some times it does back up during peak hour, peak traffic load, things like that. Most of that is caused by the lack of protected left turns. You get that lead car that wants to take a left, everybody else queues up behind, the opposing traffic all goes through, and in the end, that one car gets to turn. So a couple of minor issues with that. Stormwater, that was all redone with the 96 project on Washington Avenue. All the storm sewer was replaced. There is still some localized flooding near the ballpark that happens during after sort of moderate or more significant rain events. It doesn't hang around too long, but it is some nuisance flooding that happens. The alley has storm sewer in it as well. That pipe is actually undersized for the area that it's serving. Sewer and water, generally speaking, are in good shape. That was also replaced, that should say 96, but was replaced in 96. So the sewer and water on Washington Avenue, we don't believe we have any specific issues with. On Forest Street, we do have some old sewer and some old water mains, some cast iron water main pipe and clay tile sewer. Those are definitely beyond their reliable service life, so we'll be looking at replacing those. So proposed improvements, talking about underground or utility improvements first off. Water main, again, Washington's in good shape. It's just a block of forest that we'd be looking at replacing. That's a 12-inch main, so it's a little bit larger transmission main that comes through there. We'll replace that along with the hydrants and valves. There might be some hydrant relocations that happen on Washington Avenue just to accommodate the street improvements. Sanitary sewer, again, just Forest Street, just one block. We have an 8-inch main there that needs to be replaced, so we'll replace the main and the manholes. With the sewer and water, we would replace any service laterals that come off of that main. I believe, to our knowledge, it's just one going to an office building there. Those will get replaced from the main out to the edge of the right-of-way. Any replacement that has to happen beyond that property line, their edge of the right-of-way, that's the property owner's responsibility. It's an optional thing that they can look at doing. Storm sewer, on Washington Avenue, we're going to be limited to just the relocation of the inlets that are in the curb line. When we change that curb line, we're going to have to change how those inlets sit. So we'll have to do that, but we're generally speaking going to leave the storm sewer main alone. We'll replace the storm sewer in the alleyways. I mentioned that's a little bit undersized. We're also going to connect storm sewer systems that run through the alley in Washington Avenue. We'll cross-connect those, and that potentially could help with some of the flooding, allows a little bit of relief from one system to the other. And then we're also going to construct a detention basin, be just to the south of the Washington ballpark. There's some green space there that we can shave down, rather than going through the iterative process of upsizing storm sewer pipes downstream forever and ever and ever, and trying to get a handle on some of this nuisance flooding that happens. One way to go at it is simply build a basin that the storm sewer can sort of burp into and just overflow into during heavy events. It'll fill the basin up, and as the storm sewer gains capacity again, it'll drain out. So it'll generally be a dry basin. Street and sidewalk. The best way I can put this is, South Washington will mimic to some degree the other portions of Washington Avenue that have been done. Be a full reconstruction from the back of the sidewalk to back of sidewalk within the right-of-way. 44-foot wide urban section, concrete pavement, just like the northern portions of Washington Avenue. That's slightly narrower than the existing street. The existing street's about 48 feet wide. We're going to trim that down just a little bit, but the 44-foot will allow for comfortable parking on both sides and 2 lanes of traffic. Narrowing that road up does allow us to get a little bit of space for a boulevard between the sidewalk and the street, rather than just right now the sidewalk is directly behind the road. So the alley, not much to say there. We'll rip that out, replace it. It's the actual alleyway itself is only about 12 feet wide, so we'll have something like that with a new bituminous surface. We may need some curb and gutter, valley gutter in a few locations. Forest Street will be an urban section similar to what's there, 44 to 36 feet wide, and then sidewalk just on the north side. So pretty similar to how it sits today. Another piece of this, like it's been done on other portions of Washington Avenue, is the city wants to incorporate some streetscaping into this just to improve the aesthetics of this area, enhance it a little bit. It's been pretty well received in other portions of the community that we've done this, so we haven't refined this in utter detail yet, but some of the things that we're going to talk about or look at are be colored and stamped concrete in the boulevard space between the curb and the sidewalk, similar to what you see downtown, kind of a stamped red concrete. Trees and tree grates and tree guards, an irrigation system throughout that boulevard area. Trees don't tend to do too well in areas where we have all this impervious surface, so we will be putting irrigation in to help ensure that those trees survive. Looking at some intersection crossing nodes, again, similar to what you've seen elsewhere. That'll depend on a few other decisions, whether we do those or not. Colored pavement at the Washington and Willow intersection, the colored islands in the intersection, maybe some benches, trash receptacles, things like that. I want to spend just a moment here, and I don't necessarily want to get into the weeds on this, but talking about the Willow Street and Washington intersection a little bit. The initial option there was really to replace that signal system and enhance the intersection the best we could with a signal. The idea being we'd replace the signal with new equipment and try to incorporate protected left turns where we could, so you actually had a phase for the signal for left turns to flush out, sort of addressing some of those delays that can happen from time to time. That was one option that we've been looking at. It does result in some challenges. Adding that additional lane actually makes it a little bit more difficult for large trucks to make that movement, because now you have 3 lanes of traffic queued up at the legs. That means there's a smaller window for those large vehicles to hit. So that's a little bit challenging. We may have to get some right-of-way from some of the adjacent properties in order to facilitate the improvements. There's some impact to on-street parking in most of the directions, simply because we have to introduce that 3rd lane, so you have to start getting rid of parking sooner so you can get 3 lanes of traffic wide come into that. All in all, that would help improve some of the delay, but there are some consequences that come with that, and we would not be able to do a left turn on the eastern leg of the intersection. There's just simply too much right-of-way impact that would be caused to the adjacent business, the gas station there, so I don't think we are going to be able to do that. In light of that, another option that we're looking at, and just discussed this with the Public Works Committee yesterday, is a mini roundabout. Really similar to a traditional roundabout that everybody's seen. We have 2 of them in town. They operate very, very similar. You drive them similar. The only difference is for truckers or for large vehicles. But some of the advantages that this offers over the Signal, first and foremost, is cost savings. Signal system's right around $300,000 to put in, not including long-term O&M costs. That virtually disappears with this option. There's less impact to the on-street parking because we don't have to go back quite as far in some of the streets because you're only bringing 2 lanes of traffic into this. It can induce some traffic calming. Now, instead of vehicles, driving 25 or 30 through the intersection when they get a green light, it sort of forces everybody to at least take your foot off the gas and drive it just a little bit slower. There's less impacts to right-of-way, and the reality is there's going to be less queuing with a roundabout. The roundabout would actually process the vehicles faster, particularly during off-peak periods when you're sitting and pulled up to the light and you're just waiting for it to change and there's nobody there. With the mini roundabout concept, you can simply just move on through the intersection. So there's a number of advantages. There are some disadvantages like snow removal. Can create a little bit of a disruption to parades, although I think that it would still accommodate a parade just fine. And it's just new to the area. So anytime you try to do something a little bit new or different, there's always a little bit of angst about that. But really it would work quite well. So.
Highlight the height of it.
Yeah.
Island.
Sure. The largest difference between a mini roundabout and a traditional one is the traditional roundabouts have the large central island that's very raised. You can't see through it. You can't traverse it, although there's always somebody that tries at least a couple times a year if you look at that, a couple tire tracks. But in this case, you have that central island. It's just some raised colored concrete pavement, and it's only raised up about 2 inches, so it's just a minor elevation change between the actual traffic circle itself, and the same is true with those splitter islands. And the reason being for that is designed for the large trucks simply to drive their trailer right over. There's some interesting videos if you just Google, mini roundabout operation. You can see that the tractor portion of the truck will drive the circle for the most part, and the trailer just rides right over the top, doesn't even hardly notice that it's there. So that's the primary difference between the mini and the traditional roundabout. North Shore Drive, again, we're looking at a number of different options for that intersection. This is stuff that the council hasn't necessarily made a determination on, or the county, I should say, too. Being a county road, they need to be on board with what we do here. We're looking at everything from leaving it pretty similar to how it is, to, again, another mini roundabout, to just putting in left and right turn lanes, to putting crossing nodes in, and they all sort of offer some advantages and disadvantages. So those are things that we're going to be looking at over the next month here or so. I want to mention briefly that we are also looking at some parking improvements down south of North Shore Drive, right adjacent to the city park. Some of the considerations would be just simply leaving the parallel parking as it is, or doing something along the lines of pull-through diagonal parking where you can pull through diagonally when you're ready to leave. There's sort of an exit road rather than having to back out onto Washington Avenue. And then a relatively new concept, again, is back-in diagonal parking where folks pull up and you back into the stall. So when you're exiting, you're forward-facing. There's some advantages to that as well. So those are the improvements. Real quick, one slide here on some construction stuff. When we get to construction, of course, there's impacts to access to businesses. In this case, actually, it works out quite well. Most of the businesses or properties along this project will have access either from the alley or a side street or something like that during construction. Very, very few of them are sort of landlocked, and we have some, and those that are, we have some ways to deal with those. So we'll stage and phase the project so that they don't just open it up and do the whole thing at once. do it in some bits and chunks to try to minimize the impact. We'll have a lot of communication during construction with progress meetings and email blasts or newsletters. The city puts stuff up on the website, things like that. And then lastly, we probably will be looking for some temporary construction easements from the adjacent property owners. And that's just a temporary easement that allows us to work on private property, say 5 or 10 feet, in order to tie the improvement in with your property. Project schedule, we'll be working on the final design over the winter here. There's a chance we would do some public input meetings, sort of depending on some of the feedback maybe that we get tonight. If we did those, we'd do those over the winter as needed. It may be more along the lines of one-on-one property owner meetings, but we'll see how that goes. Targeting to try to bid the project in April or so, followed by an assessment hearing. That's when we would actually have the bids back in hand. We'd have final assessments prepared and have a hearing on that, probably in right around May is the target. Following that, we would award the construction contract and then get going with the project this summer. Project costs, it's a lot of numbers. I'm just going to hit the high ones here. We're looking at a total project cost of about $4,259,000. So pretty good sized project. The largest cost being the street component, street and sidewalk, at just shy of $2.2 million. About $461,000 in streetscapes, $130,000 in the alley, and from there on down, the numbers get a little bit smaller. We do have about $830,000 in storm sewer costs. So. But you can see the bottom numbers there with the sanitary sewer and the water main. Those are fairly small compared to the rest of the numbers. So how does this project get paid for? The funding sources in this case, the city will have funds into this, utility funds for the sewer and water, as well as just general tax levy dollars. The county, again, it's a cooperative project. The county will have state aid dollars, and I'm not sure, but I think they may be using a portion of their sales tax, their 0.5% sales tax, to pay for a portion of their share. And then we've got the $1 million LRIP grant that can go towards the street improvements. And then the balance of the project would be special assessments to the adjacent properties. Sticking with the county, so this slide is intended just to outline what the county actually pays for with the project. They pay for sort of the basic or the core road costs associated with Washington Avenue. So some of the street costs, sidewalk, basic lighting, meaning sort of replacing what's there, some of those storm sewer adjustments that I talked about, and then half of that traffic signal cost would be theirs. So in graphical form, this, or tabular form, this is what this looks like. Out of that total project cost of $4.2 million, the county is responsible for just under $2.5 million, which leaves $1.8 million for the city share. And that city share will get allocated up between special assessments and city funds. So we look at that $1.8 million. The city special assessment policy sort of dictates how we allocate those costs between city and special assessments. Sewer and water, which again is really only forced, 75% of the standard costs are assessed. A standard water main is considered an 8-inch main. Standard sewer is also an 8-inch main. The city assumes that remaining 25%, and then any oversizing and looping and non-assessable areas, areas that we just can't assess. And then service laterals are assessed at a rate of 100%. The city assesses 50% of that city's share of the street and surface costs, and then the city assumes that remaining 50% in non-assessable areas. City pays 100% of the costs of anything that isn't paid for by the county already, 100% of their share of the storm sewer, lighting, traffic signal, and alley. So again, in tabular form, this is how this all shakes out. The street and the sidewalk, there's about $124,000 being assessed, which is about 6% of the overall cost. Streetscapes, $230,000, which is half of the streetscape cost. Nothing for the alley, the street lighting, signals, storm sewer, none of that's assessed, and then pretty small amounts being assessed for sewer and water services. So in total, $405,000 or thereabouts is going to be assessed out of that $4.2 million. So it's about 10% of the overall project cost. So we take that again, we go back to the assessment policy, and we have an amount now. Now it's how does it get spread about? In effect, the short answer is you take those individual costs, you divide them by the number of units that are available to come up with a rate. In the case of sewer and water, it's based on a front footage basis, so it's the short or the width of your lot on your short side. Lots of 50 and 100-foot wide lots. Divide that by the sewer or water to get to a rate. Service laterals are done on an each basis. For street, if you have a rectangular interior lot, your assessable footage is simply the width of your lot. Corner lots are a little bit more tricky. You have that width of your short side plus half the distance of your long side of your lot, assuming there's an improvement on both sides. When we do all those calculations, this is where we get. These are the rates that we're projecting for the special assessments. So for the street and sidewalk, about $34.43 a foot, about $74 a foot for the streetscapes, $55 for sanitary sewer per foot. Sewer service is about $1,900. Water main, about $51 a foot. And then a water service at about $2,300. So some example estimated assessments. The top three lines here are various widths of lots, 50, 100, 200-foot wide lots. If you were on Washington Avenue, not on a corner, not receiving any sewer and water benefits, just for the street and the streetscaping. So that's most of the lots along Washington. 50-foot lot is looking at about $5,400. 100-foot lot, just under $11,000. A 200-foot lot would be just under $22,000. And then there's a couple of cases here where some properties will receive some sewer and water benefit. If you had a 100-foot lot with sidewalk and streetscapes and sewer and water, you'd be looking at about $18,000. Assessments, again, we'll do that hearing this spring, probably around May. Those would be levied against the property starting in 2021. Typically, we do these sorts of projects over a 20-year term. Interest rates in the past year or two have been right around that 5% category. Property owners always have the option to prepay a portion or all or none of the special assessment. Anything you put towards it's just like any other loan. It's just going to reduce your interest charge over time. That is it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience that has a question or wishes to make a comment regarding the preliminary engineering report for the South Washington Avenue project?
Do you have a schedule set up as far as when they're going to do what parts of the other? Because we're kind of landlocked right there.
Right.
If we do the alley and the street at the same time, nobody can get to us.
We would not do that. To answer your question, Larry, I don't have that schedule nailed down just yet. We definitely will, but what I can tell you is we would certainly not do the alley at the same time the street. Those would be staged separately, so they have to have one done before they start the other, with the idea of being able to provide access.
Yes,
Right.
Ryan.
Bruce and I have limited access too, and is there going to be provisions for that? I talked to Bruce a little bit about it, but...
Well, I'm not worried about Bruce, for sure.
Okay, pardon my part.
No, you're two of the properties that virtually don't, and my intent would be to try to potentially work something out in the way of an easement with the clinic or something, where the city would get an easement so we can get some rear access or something like that during that time that you don't have access. That's something I'd probably stop down and talk to you about, Ryan, and we'll figure it out. The good news is, I'd want to reiterate, is the most disruptive portions of these projects is generally when the sewer and water are going in, because you have all this trenching and you physically can't get down the road. In this case, that's real minimal in this case. It's mostly street work, so a good chunk of the time, even when it's under work, you'll be able to get there.
Yeah, I remember that from '96.
We won't have to do as much this time, so.
Is that alley going to be beefed up a little bit? Because now they have a lot of garbage trucks that go on it that beefs it up every year.
No, it needs work, for sure. No, we'll take that into consideration. Yep.
Further questions? Okay, hearing none, that public, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So why just the one section of forest? Like, why not the whole thing?
Sure. Yeah, no argument. Forest needs to be done. Forest is awful.
Personally, I think forest is in rough shape compared to Washington.
It is, and it's something we need to look at. The reality is, we're doing, the block of forest that we're doing sort of was not in the project scope, and it became collateral damage because we were redoing the storm sewer in the alley, and we had to connect that out to Washington. So now we're digging up a half a block of forest just for that. And it was like, well, we're already in there for that. We might as well do the sewer and water next to it because we got to redo the pavement. And then it was, well, now there's only another 120 feet to get to lake, so we might as well at least get this block done. But to your point, I don't disagree.
John, you might want to explain that Washington Avenue is a county road,
Yeah.
a county project.
Yep, it's a joint project between the county, and part of this was we were able to get a grant to help, $1 million to help offset the cost for this, which shows up in some of the assessment rates here. And that was just happenstance. Unfortunately, there's not a similar type of grant that we could go get for forest, so it is a street we need to get worked into our CIP, I think.
Is it on the CIP, John?
I don't believe it is. No.
Further questions?
Was that one, I thought you had said, I gave you this with my husband, and I thought you had said that the sewer and water was redone for us on Lake
Yep.
in the previous year, so that won't be done then?
We're going to redo the sewer and water, but it doesn't, adjacent to your house, but you're not served from forest, you're served from lake.
Yes.
So you've already paid your specials
Yes.
for that. So we're going to redo it, but it's not going to be assessed to you. So if you go back to that slide where I show what we're charging for, what the costs are for sewer and water and how much is being assessed, we're assessing like that much because I think there's only one property, the office building there that would be on the northwest corner of Forest and Washington. That's the only one that actually is serviced from that main.
Further questions?
Is the interest rate a variable interest rate or fixed?
It's fixed, and it's based off of ultimately whatever the city's able to get in terms of their interest rate on their bond to pay for the project. It's based off of that. It's typically a couple of 1.5% or 2% higher than what the city's able to get it at, but it is fixed.
Okay. Any further questions?
John, I'd like to add, though, I think when you said maybe on some public meetings,
Yeah.
I think once we have that discussion with the county on
Sure.
the 27th, I would like to tell the public that we are going to have at least one public meeting.
Sure.
If we put that final plan together as you brought up with the roundabouts, I think we're going to want to let people know.
Yeah, no disagreement. That'd be a good idea.
We can do that. Okay. With that public hearing is closed. What are your wishes, council?
Your Honor, the Public Works Committee reviewed this. We would recommend approving the resolution accepting the amended preliminary engineer's report, ordering the project improvements, and authorizing Apex Engineering to prepare plans and specs. And I so move.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the resolution accepting the amended preliminary report, ordering the project improvements, and authorizing the engineers to prepare plans and specs for the South Washington Avenue project. Discussion?
I have a question or a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
I do have some concern about the roundabouts. Is this something that's going to be discussed at the meeting that we're having in a week or two here?
Yes.
Or-
Yes.
So that's not, I can vote yes on this, and that's not set in stone?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
Further discussion?
Like I said, one of the concerns I have with roundabouts is the speed of people that use them, and I'm concerned about pedestrian walkways, especially down by the park area.
Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Without objection, I'm going to call on our new fire chief, Ryan Swanson. He's got a couple of introductions that he would like to make. Ryan?
So I'm Ryan Swanson. Most of you already know me. I'm now the fire chief. I wanted to have Jason Harrier. Jason stepped up from deputy chief to assistant chief. And then Mason Pender. Most people in the community do know Mason. And Mason stepped up from a captain to our deputy chief, so wanted them both to come down tonight so everybody can put a face with a name and
Perfect, thank you for being here, and congratulations on your new positions, and it sounds like we need some more firefighters over.
yeah, I don't know if you want to do that now or do it during the public safety portion or.
You know what, we've got some other folks ahead of you, Ryan,
Yeah,
if that's
I can do
okay.
that later, so-
Okay, thank
At
you.
least he can lead, so.
Right, okay. Without objection, I'd like to jump down to the public hearing 4D and call to order a public hearing to give consideration to the granting of an on-sale liquor license and Sunday liquor license to Hanson Properties of Lakeside LLC for February 1, 2020 through December 31, 2020. Kelsey, do you have anything to preface that with, or?
Mayor and council, I believe all the paperwork's been turned in, fees been paid, background check came in clear, so would recommend approval.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience that has a question or wishes to make a comment regarding granting of those licenses? Hearing none, that public hearing is closed, and I would entertain a motion for their approval.
I guess I'd make the motion, public, or Liquor and Gambling Committee looked at this, sees nothing wrong with it, so we would recommend approval of granting an on-sale intoxicating liquor license and Sunday liquor license to Hanson Properties of Lakeside LLC, doing business as Lakeside Tavern, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to grant an on-sale liquor license and a Sunday liquor license to Hanson Properties of Lakeside LLC from February 1, 2020 to December 31st, 2020. Discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries.
Congratulations.
Thanks, Cole. Can we jump down to 5A, please? Dan?
Sure, Your Honor. So item 5A is second reading of ordinance 458 for the annexation of a 37.25 acre tract of land in Detroit Township and zoning the tract RM multifamily residence district, and this is at 19108 County Road 131. CDC reviewed it yesterday. The council passed it first reading last month. We recommended approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to give second reading and adopt ordinance 458, annexing a 37.25 acre tract of land in Detroit Township and zoning that tract RM at 19108 County Road 131. Discussion on the motion?
Just a comment as per last time, I am going to vote no on it, just not because I have any problem with the development, but because I think we ought to be zoning single family, the single family portion, you know, as our, what is it, one or whatever it is, not multi.
Okay. Further discussion?
Well, I have to agree with that too, because once again, we're putting more multiple family units on the north side. We need places for single-family homes, and I think we really need to look at finding areas for people that want to have a single-family home without having apartment units or large units around them.
Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries, and that's a simple majority, Charlie? Yes. Okay. Barry, did you have something you wanted to bring up this evening?
Brad had a permit request for a parade.
Your Honor, that's number 5E, or 6E, and we were going to have that as a deferral. Barry, the Public Works Committee would like to have you come to our meeting on February 10th at 3 o'clock. You can do that?
Sure.
We just want to clarify some concerns and questions.
Sure.
Okay.
So February 10th, 3 o'clock, right in this room over here, Barry. Okay? Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes?
I think for Mr. Brislin, would you want to do 6B, because that concerns him also?
Let's do 6B then.
Thank you, Your Honor. So after you approve the second reading of the annexation, the Brislin would like to have us approve the preliminary engineering report for the Brislin subdivision, street and utility improvements, and setting a public hearing for February 11th, 2020. This is phase 1 of the project. It would be 14 units, I believe, either single family or twin homes, correct, Mr. Brislin?
Yes, and understand what we have on there is a preliminary plat that is not, so they may become a little bit narrower and then figure out where it fits to have the single family.
So right now, we're just voting on the preliminary, approving the preliminary engineer's report. So the Public Works Committee has reviewed this, recommends approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the preliminary engineering report for the Bristland subdivision street and utility improvements and setting a public hearing for February 11th, 2020. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Now you're fixed up, right? Okay, thank you. Does anyone else want me to move an item on the agenda? I don't think there is. So we'll go back to there's one more public hearing. I will adjourn the regular meeting, call to order a public hearing to receive public comments on the matter of amending the liquor ordinance. And that would be to give first reading of ordinance 459, amending the Detroit Lake City Code, Chapter 702.04, licensing fees. Kelsey or Dan, do you want to preface this?
Mayor and council, what the amendment to the ordinance would allow, if you look at the proposed item number 2, there would be allowing of a prorated fee. So basically, if an applicant is an initial applicant for a license at that premises, the fee for the license, if issued, shall be prorated by the number of months remaining in the calendar year from the first day of the month in which the license shall be issued to the last day of December in that calendar year. Currently, the ordinance does not allow for prorating. This would allow us to at least prorate that annual fee. The rest, basically, the other fees would be the same as they are now in the ordinance. The investigation fee cannot be prorated, nor would there be refunds.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that has a question or wishes to make a comment regarding that amendment to our liquor licensing fees in our ordinance? Hearing none, that public hearing is closed, and I would entertain a motion.
Your Honor, the Liquor and Gambling Committee looked at this and recommend approval of the consideration of the first reading of ordinance 459 and the ordinance amending the City of Detroit Lake City Code, Chapter 702.04, licensing fees, and I so move.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to give first reading of ordinance 459, an ordinance amending our liquor license fee ordinance. Discussion on the motion?
I've got a question. It's more of a comment, but is there been any discussion about limiting how many licenses one business group could have in our community?
There's no restriction in our ordinance or statute.
Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. So now we'll jump down to the balance of the Community Development Committee. Chairman Wenner, is there anything else on the...
Nothing else, Your Honor.
Okay. Public Works Committee, Bruce? Is there...
Thank you, Your Honor. Item 6A is consideration to approve the temporary construction easement agreement for filling of the wastewater treatment ponds, and that's exactly what it means. This is related to the airport. Public Works Committee recommends approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the temporary construction easement agreement for filling of the wastewater treatment ponds. Discussion on the motion? So those are the ponds where we had that chemical plant?
Right on the west side of 59.
Yeah.
Well, actually, we're filling a pond on the east side of 59 too, but
Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Item C, consideration to approving the final payment to Saline Brothers for the Long Lake Annexation Phase 4 in the amount of $52,733.74. Public Works Committee recommends approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the final payment for the Long Lake Annexation Phase 4. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Item D, consideration to approving the solicitation for bids for South Shore Park and the South Shore Park Shelter, I should clarify. Public Works Committee recommends that we approve the solicitation for bids, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the solicitation for bids for the South Shore Park Shelter. Discussion?
Can I just make a comment?
Yes.
I just hope we really landscape the heck out of all these buildings so that it's really, blends well into that development out there.
Sounds good.
You're going to tell your...
Just want to comment, we also are looking at a pollinator grant also, that we part of the landscaping, so we look at more forbs, that type of, the whole neighborhood, and that's one of the things we're looking at, applying for a grant to do that out there. And rightfully so, if you know, from my annual report, we've looked at branding our village, identifying them, and that's what we're trying to do, so people recognize that through whether it's rain gardens, pollination gardens, or just landscaping in general.
Make sure you pass it on to your successor.
I will do that, it's already in a little packet.
All right.
No, I just, maybe to highlight on that, and thanks to Brad, he jumped in there. We also had some help from Scott Sonsgaard from Becker Pet and Bill Hickey with Isaac Walton. And I was going to give credit to Carol because we heard about it on the radio, but it's for Rusty Patch B. And if we can put that in as part of the park, that would be nice.
Cool, good stuff. All right, I think we have to vote though. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, item E, Mayor, we wanted to recommend deferral, and Mr. Schrader has left already, but it isn't an issue, I don't think, with the committee about holding the parade. It was only that the 30th happens to be during the street fair, and their original plan for the parade was right from the chamber right down Washington, which we said that's really not going to happen, so we need to visit with him. So we asked for a deferral, and we'll meet with him next month.
Sounds good.
Item F is consideration of a resolution authorizing the approval for the city of Detroit Lakes to apply to be a bike-friendly community. Public Works Committee strongly recommends we approve this resolution, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve a resolution authorizing the approval of the city to apply to be a bike-friendly America community. And before we vote, Bruce, could you just tell us a little bit about what that involves and what the effect would be on the city?
Well, I can tell you that Fergus Falls has already been approved as a bike-friendly community.
So then we need to do it.
And we're certainly more bike-friendly than they are. But Mary, do you have anything you want to add on that? Have you looked at that draft?
I have not looked at it.
Okay.
It's actually about a 45-question application. It's a pretty intense application. It's a nonprofit group who gives the designation, and it basically just gives us some recognition as being a bike-friendly community. It helps our Green Step cities, kind of the ranking in our program for that, and also future grant applications. So.
And I think there's a bronze, silver, and gold level. And like I said, Mayor, the Fergus Falls is at the silver level. We can definitely do better than that.
Absolutely. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
And that's all under Public Works.
Thank you. Anything under the finance?
There is nothing.
Okay. We're down to the Public Safety Committee. Ron?
Okay, item A, we had discussion regarding the proposed tobacco ordinance amendment to comply with the new federal regulation, and the committee recommends that we go ahead and move the age for buying tobacco products from age 21 to, or age 18 and now to age 21. The committee recommends, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded.
Okay.
The motion's been discussion?
There's actually no action that you can take on because that's actually an ordinance change, and we have to do a 30-day notice to
okay, all right.
So Alderman Zeman's correct. The discussion was to move ahead and draft that draft ordinance, and then we got to send out notice. So at the earliest you'd be looking at is the March council agenda for first reading because of timing to get the notice out.
So the public safety recommendation, Ron, is to move forward with the
Correct.
ordinance changes.
And actually, right now, we haven't received any information from the federal or the state yet to follow all these through, and I know a lot of retailers have been calling the city office wondering what to do about it, but it's in the works. It's just hasn't happened yet.
Would the motioner and the second withdraw their motion so that we don't have a motion sitting at the table?
So move.
Whoever seconded, you withdraw.
I didn't second it, but I have got a question.
Go ahead.
Well, when you said all tobacco products, are you saying all tobacco products or just the vaping products?
This is
Federal law is all tobacco products.
So all tobacco is to 18 now?
It's to 21.
18 to 21.
As of December 21st, the federal law went into effect.
So it's in effect already as a practical matter. Our ordinance is preempted, but discussing changing it to make it conform with the federal law.
We just had a discussion this 1.5 years ago, so I'm just kind of surprised that there's been no discussion yet on that.
Well,
There's federal law, there's state law, and this,
You want me to give a little
it's kind of like the
background?
marijuana deal in Colorado, right? It's against the federal law, but the states approved it, is that?
I think everyone was surprised. It was part of an appropriation bill that the federal government passed, and one of the provisions of that appropriation bill was basically changing the age to buy tobacco products to 21. Everyone was taken aback by it. The FDA, if you go to their website looking for more assistance, that says more guidance is coming in the next 180 days. So I think they're still trying to figure out what to do with it. I think the state is still trying to figure out what to do with it. Maybe you'll see some legislative change. I think you're going to see more to come on this issue, but the league has put out guidance. The issue is our ordinance states minor is defined as age 18, and they are recommending if you have 18 in your ordinance, you should amend it to 21 to be consistent with federal law.
And Bruce, the idea here would be to just make that minor change now and wait for the additional guidance that we may or may not get from the federal government. There might be other changes coming.
Okay.
But
well, I understood. I thought it was the vaping, so I didn't realize it was the whole.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so no action on that. We're just recommending that you go to the first reading of ordinance next month. And Ron, you had something else?
Okay, yes, well, so in front of you here, you should have a resolution number 2020 in regards for accepting a donation of $5,000 for the fire department to use for equipment. This money is turned in from Poulter's TIP for the amount, and Chief Swanson says he has a lot of uses for that money, so it's a motion to go ahead and accept that donation and use for equipment.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve a resolution accepting a donation of $5,000 from the Turn-In Poachers Group. The donation is going to our fire department. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, the motion carries. And why don't we, Ryan, why don't we have you come up now at this time and tell us what you have to tell us.
I don't know if you want to hear all that. So yeah, I actually called Dale Peterson tonight and talked to him a little bit about the donation he got and stuff like that, and told him what it's going to go for, and we're going to buy new hoods for all the firefighters, which will keep the chemicals off of their skin, so around their neck area and face area that the face masks don't get to. Obviously this is for better health and all that, so we're really appreciative of that donation, and it's going to go for a very good cause. The other thing I'd like to put out is the neighborhoods, the fire hydrants are getting really buried. A lot of people in their neighborhoods think that if the fire hydrant isn't in your yard, it is not your problem. But I would like to try to encourage, if the word can get out, that neighborhoods put together little groups and go out and dig their fire hydrants out, because fire hydrants are on the average of about 600 feet apart. So if there is a fire between fire hydrant A and fire hydrant B, we have to use one of them, so it could definitely affect your home. So if people could really get together with their neighborhoods and plow out their fire hydrants, because I guess we're going to get some more snow coming up. So Minnesota winter is just actually starting. So we did receive 2 applicants. So Glory was sending notices out to them. We're going to run them through the testing. Hopefully we can at least get 2 more on, as we are we're at about an all-time low in the 50 years I know between my dad's term on the department and mine. So hopefully we can get some new members and some new blood and kind of drive that back up. And then the other last thing I got is the American Red Cross sent out a notice, which I did give to Glory. We're going to put it on the website, that if people are in need of smoke detector stuff like that, they have a program out there, because obviously smoke detectors do save lives, and we would at least encourage people to have one on every floor. So I think she was going to tag that somehow on the city page so we can get that message out. So
Okay,
any questions for me?
If you could see fit to mention something, Vicki, in your article about we need more firefighters in the business about cleaning the hydrants around town, that'd be sure appreciated. And I'll mention it on the radio tomorrow and see if we can.
We're at 23. Yeah.
Well, Ryan, I think you brought up the smoke detectors, but I heard you on the radio the other day talking about the CO2 detectors, so maybe you could mention that, because I think that's an important point.
Yeah, so CO is a big problem. It's a deadly gas that you don't know it's there. A lot of our CO detectors, and I'm not sure on the age of them, they were only good for 10 years or 5 years originally. So I think it was around 2005, somewhere in there. Those CO detectors were only good for 5 years. After that, there was a new standard put out that they had to make them good for 10 years. So a CO detector is still only good for 10 years. After 10 years, they're no good. You just got to get new ones. So a lot of our calls we go to are actually a bad detector head, but we go through with our detectors and make sure that that is that. If we do have a location that we are getting actual CO in it and the meter's going off, we obviously encourage the people to leave the premises and stay somewhere else for the evening until they can get a heating personnel there to check the system. Because our concern is if somebody takes the battery out of the CO detector and there's something malfunctioning in their gas system, those levels continue to rise, and then it could get fatal. So encourage everybody to put CO detectors in their house. A lot of older homes don't have them, but still for 30, 40 bucks you can buy one. It's cheap insurance.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yep.
Appreciate the update. Okay, anything on the liquor?
I've got one, for next month, Chief Todd put together a great annual report, and we don't have time to do it tonight, but I'd like to have him on the agenda for next month to give his annual report to the public and to the city council.
We can do that.
Yes.
Dan, anything for the Liquor Gambling Control Committee?
Nope, covered it.
I know there are a couple things, Madeline, on the public utilities. One,
Yes.
I think Vernell wants to give us a brief update on the wastewater treatment plant, I believe.
Let's take care of item A first. Is consideration to approve the IBEW union 3-year contract. Every 3 years, we, as a city, have to have a new contract with our union workers, and this was the year to go for it. And I'll call on Vernell just to give us a little bit of highlight on that contract, then we need to approve it.
Sure. The terms of the contract are for 2020 to 2022. The wages in the contract are as were prescribed in the compensation study that we just went through and has been approved. Longevity is out of the contract. That's been replaced with the pay-for-performance plan that was outlined in the compensation study. A couple clarifications on when meals are allowed for working long days or weekends on long outages or storm work. Minimum call-out time was changed between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. for additional time for a minimum call-out. There's no stacking of overtime on multiple calls for that, though. New hires are allowed to use 40 hours of vacation after their 6-month probationary period, and the caps on the health insurance are parallel with other agreements that have been approved by the city for 2020 to 2022.
And thanks to Vernell and the other members that worked on that contract. And the Public Utilities Commission reviewed it this morning, and I make a motion that we approve that contract. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the IBEW union 3-year contract. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. So the PUC approved it and we also approve it, right?
Yes.
Is that how it works?
Yep,
Okay.
that's what needs to happen.
Very good.
Item B is an update on the E2Q construction, and I'll call on Vernell to give us the good, word.
Alderman Inholt asked for an update a couple months ago, and I wasn't here last month, so here's the hoorah. Some of you were there in October when Governor Walz visited. If you happen to see WCCO News Sunday morning, Governor Walz was on TV and he gave a plug for Detroit Lakes wastewater treatment facility for being a model project for projects with PFA funding in the state of Minnesota. The MBR facility is up and running. The effluent quality out of that facility is phenomenal. What we call total suspended solids is non-detect out of the discharge pipe. Nitrogen ammonia is non-detect. Phosphorus levels are between 0.06 and 0.1, which meet the new standards imposed in the compliance schedule that we need to meet in about another 6 or 7 months. And the quality is phenomenal. It's working very, very well. 3 main structures have been completed. The influent complex where the water comes in, preliminary treatment building that's got a second set of screens in it, and then the MBR complex is mostly completed too. Some punch list items that the contractor needs to work on for that. We have not accepted any of those buildings yet. We have a performance test that's due with Suez, the manufacturer of the MBR facility, and we are waiting for the rest of the process to be completed before we start that performance testing. Once the performance testing is done, the warranty will start on the MBR facility. Right after the governor visited, we started demolition on the other old facilities that need to come out to start the second phase of the project. That took about 3.5, maybe 4 weeks. Then they started on the solids handling building. That's the building that sits to the west that you're starting to see. The precast went up not too long ago. The equipment in that is being installed in that. The digesters have been repurposed. The clarifiers are being repurposed for storage. And we're probably, if things go well and Mother Nature cooperates a little bit, 3.5 or 4 months from being done. We're at 83% complete with the project. So far, so good. The quality of work has been good. The performance of the facility we've tested so far has been phenomenal, and we're very happy with where we are at. So, any other questions? I'd entertain questions or anything else.
Okay, thanks for the update, Brunel. We've got some administrative items we need to take care of. Apparently, we have to accept the resignation of Brad Green as the Public Works Director.
We don't have to accept.
No, that's true. Is that typical protocol? Can he just quit? I would entertain a motion. We're going to have a send-off for Brad on February 7th here in the council chambers from 1 to 3. You're all welcome to come, but I guess we need a motion to accept Brad's resignation.
Well, sadly, I would make a motion that we authorize his okay to retire.
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries.
I predict a big snowstorm the night of the 6th.
We also need to approve a resolution authorizing the execution of the Minnesota Department of Transportation grant agreement. Kelsey, do you want to just prep that a little bit?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, this MnDOT agreement is for our approach lighting system at the airport. It's not a federally eligible item, so that's why it's a state grant. It's a 70-30 split, 30% local share. Basically, on Highway 59, if you look west to the airport, where a lot of the trees were cleared, that's where basically the approach lighting system will be located.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to approve that resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and second to approve a resolution authorizing us to execute a Minnesota Department of Transportation grant agreement for the airport lighting. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I don't have recommendations for the Park Board, the Public Utilities Commission, or the Tourism Bureau. I'll try to have those ready for the February meeting. Gary Nansen has served 3 terms on the PUC, and he's not eligible to continue. And if anyone has got any recommendations that they'd like to make to me for that position, I would be open to hearing those. The council workshop that we're going to have on January 27th is going to start at 4 p.m. here in the council chambers. Kelsey, do you have just a brief tentative agenda for what's on tap for that?
Yes, just want to emphasize again, it's going to be at 4 o'clock. It's going to be at 4 o'clock. We were able to move it back because we don't have the conflict with the school board meeting. 2 main agenda items right now would be the discussion about South Washington and just talking about some of those design options. And then BKV, who's our architect for the police department, will also be here to go over where we're at with design. They have some 3D modeling they can show of what it'll look like, and then they'll check in on where they're at with the budget.
So Kelsey and I talked, and we decided that we're probably not going to have a long-range planning session this year. We've probably got enough on our plate for this coming year, and so we'll have just those two items to discuss. At 4 p.m. on the 27th, we're going to host here at Detroit Lakes the next joint governance meeting on January 21st at 7 a.m. and the 2020 joint governance dates are listed on the agenda, as well as the 2020 council meeting dates. And I'm going to make a shorter State of the City address, which I'm sure you're all glad to hear. But before I do that, is there anyone else in the audience that has anything, or any of our staff, any of the council members? I'll go around. Bruce, anything else? Because I'll adjourn after I'm done, I think, so.
Okay, well, yeah, two things, I guess. First of all, just, I'm sure Brad will get a lot of discussion at the party on the 7th, but I just want to personally say I was here, helped interview for him. He's made a huge difference to this city. We owe a lot to him, what he's been able to do with his organizational skills and his management skills, and I appreciate that. The other thing I just kind of, Mayor, wanted to, I talked to you about this and just wanted to get the word out ahead of time that I will not be running for re-election after this year, and I wanted to do that, get the word out soon enough so that if anybody's interested in running, I encourage them to come to committee meetings and the council meetings to get an idea of what goes on here. So.
Thank you, Bruce. And also, I don't know if you saw some of the stuff that Brad handed out about some of the history going back to when he first came on board. It's kind of interesting, though. So, cool stuff. Thank you. Jamie?
Yeah, I also want to thank Brad. I served on the park board when he first came on board, and I really appreciate the long-range planning approach. I also had my first major committee chairmanship when he was staffed and learned a few things, so thank you. Thanks for training me in.
Dan?
Thanks, Brad, for everything. Park board again, I was there when you started and you've done a good job.
Thank you. Ron?
Caves, likewise, Brad, thanks for all you've done. You've done a great job for the city and appreciate all of your hard work. I'd just like to take a couple of minutes. I'm chairman of the Housing Authority in Detroit Lakes, and the Housing Authority has had a very good year, and I just want to list a couple items because our staff over there, Kurt Keena, his two ladies have done an excellent job for us this year. They've been very busy with their help of our executive director, Kurt Keena. We were able to receive 2 large grants for updates of our Pleasant View facility at Washington Avenue. One of the grants was from the state of Minnesota in the amount of $442,000, and that money was used to update and replace the entire mechanical system for heating and cooling. And the building is virtually almost 50 years old down there now. We also put in a new flooring and furniture in the main part of the building on the main floor also, which really updated. In addition to that grant, we have just received now another $264,000 that's going to be used to help fixing up the apartments, and that would include new bathroom facilities and cupboards and so forth on it. So they've received a lot of great help down there. They've done a big job in getting these grants, and if you see them, tell them thank you. And the Housing Authority is going to have an open house on Monday, February 10th from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and they want to welcome everybody from the City Council open to the public and come down and take a look at their new gigs. It looks very, very nice. They've done a great job, and they're pretty proud of it. The residents are too. And you know, most of that housing down there is income-based housing, so it's very much needed. And like I said, Kurt Keene and the staff have done a great job.
Thank you for that report, Ron. Appreciate it. Brad, I'll save my comments for the big shindig coming up on the 7th. Okay. Madeline?
I'd say thanks to Brad, too. I think when I joined the city council 10 years ago, he was the first staff person that said, come on over and see what we're doing at Public Works. And I was pretty blown away by what he manages to do with the facility that he has right now and the staff that he has. So thanks so much, Brad.
You're welcome. Thank you. Natalie?
I echo everyone else. Thanks, Brad. I also got a tour last month of Public Works buildings.
Jay?
Nice job, Brad. Thanks for everything.
And again, I just, run errands around other communities for my folks and whatnot, and I just think our streets are in way better shape in the winter than anywhere else. And good job to you and your crew, and thanks for your years of service.
Thank you.
Now that we did all the compliments on the 7th, we can really come out.
Well, there'll be some comments about how the street department fills in my driveway. But yeah.
Your wife Karen is not allowed to come, I get it.
Yeah, she's the one that gets it, so.
All right, well, thank you for all the comments, and with that, I'm going to deliver the, hopefully a little shorter version of the State of the City address this evening. So, to the City Council, City staff, and the citizens of Detroit Lakes, Minnesota, it's an honor to deliver this evening the annual State of the City address for the year 2019. Overall, 2019 was certainly another very good year in the City of Detroit Lakes, with several significant city projects as well as continuing development, expansion, and growth in our private sector and in new housing units. We continue to be financially strong and stable. Good leadership and planning continue to be the hallmark of the city, providing us all with a good quality of life and a bright future. Tonight, I would like to take this opportunity to briefly review and highlight some of the things that have happened this past year and some of the plans for 2020 and beyond. Some notable civic projects: Phase 1 and most of Phase 2 of the new $20 million runway and taxiway project at the Detroit Lakes Becker County Airport was completed in 2019. Phase 3 of the project was also begun this past fall, with the entire project scheduled to be completed in May and June of this year. This project expands the runway to 5,200 feet, including a parallel taxiway allowing larger aircraft to utilize the facility and enhancing opportunities for our city and regional businesses. Construction continued in 2019 for our new state-of-the-art wastewater treatment facility, which is the largest single municipal project ever funded in the City of Detroit Lakes at almost $35 million. And I won't go into too much more because you heard Vernell give us a lot of good information on that. Thanks, Vernell. The Boys and Girls Club of Detroit Lakes completed construction and opened their doors on their new 30,000 square foot facility this past year. This $6.2 million project is a public-private nonprofit venture. As the city owns the land, the Boys and Girls Club of Detroit Lakes operates the facility, and the charitable giving of private donors made the project a reality. And so Detroit Lakes and the surrounding area, I think, certainly can be proud of the local stewardship that once again has built a significantly important community facility. Some highlights from the private sector: Detroit Lakes had another solid year in 2019, both in terms of private development and in housing. Building permits topped $35 million this past year, which is the second highest total in the past 10 years, and included 35 new single-family housing units. Over 200 new homes have been constructed in Detroit Lakes in the past 5 years. Multifamily projects completed or currently under construction include the Norby's Flats, a $2.7 million project, which includes 10,000 square feet of retail space and 13 housing units on the second floor. Apex Townhomes, a 30-unit affordable townhome development. Pelican Landing, a $12 million project, providing 76 assisted living units. And Midtown Development, a $6 million project on South Washington Avenue, creating 11,000 square feet of service and retail space and 30 living units on the top 3 floors. Financially, we can all be proud that Detroit Lakes continues to remain fiscally sound and has done so in spite of the drastic reductions that we've seen in local government aid over the past 19 years. Our finance department again received the Government Finance Officers Association Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting, which we've received annually for over 20 years. In addition, our credit rating remains excellent, and our city's auditing firm issued a clean audit with no findings in 2019. In December, the City Council approved the final 2020 budget and levy. While the council did approve a modest increase in the levy of 4.5%, because of the continual strong expansion of our city's tax base, taxpayers who did not receive an increase in their assessed value will see their city tax bill decrease from the previous year. Detroit Lakes continues to enjoy one of the lowest tax rates in the region, including cities like Fergus Falls, East Grand Forks, Bemidji, Thief River Falls, and others. And statewide, our city tax rate is significantly lower than the average city rate for all greater Minnesota cities with populations between 5 and 10,000. Providing property tax relief, flexibility in funding growth, and providing enhancements to our quality of life, Detroit Lakes also enjoys prosperous enterprise revenues. Our municipal liquor store had gross receipts topping $7.3 million in 2019, making our operation the 8th highest grossing municipal liquor store in Minnesota. With healthy net profits from operations, transferred to the general fund from the liquor store is scheduled to be $561,000 in 2020. Our finance department also projects that the final receipts from the city's food and beverage tax will be approximately $500,000 for 2019, another new high since the inception of the tax. While not a direct transfer, the tax provides an ongoing resource for stewardship to our area lakes, for parking and trail improvements, and for continued redevelopment of our business corridor sector. Finally, transfer to the general fund from the city electric utility as a payment in lieu of taxes will be $605,000 in 2020. So to put these funds into perspective, assuming that these revenue funds did not exist in the city this past year, Detroit Lakes would have had to increase property taxes by over 30% to maintain and fund the status quo. And this fall, collections began on our new local sales tax, which will provide funding for a new police department facility. Initial collections are far exceeding the original projected income, and assuming this trend continues, the facility could potentially be paid off in less than 6 years. The city's departments, the public utility, and the various advisory boards and commissions and the city council committees continue to work with the city council this past year to enhance the public good and the quality of life here in Detroit Lakes. And I urge all the city council members and any interested citizens to review the various year-end reports from our city department, copies of which can be obtained here at City Hall. Some of the highlights from our various departments this past year: the Planning Commission, the Development Authority, and the Community Development Committee had a busy 2019 dealing with numerous activities. The Planning Commission and the Community Development Committee reviewed 4 zoning requests, 14 conditional use permits, 9 variances, 7 subdivisions, 2 non-conforming use permits, 6 annexations, along with numerous city code amendment reviews. Of the 14 conditional use permit applications, 11 of those reflected the changes to our zoning ordinance allowing short-term rental by conditional use. And finally, after 3 years of effort, a new revised shoreland ordinance was adopted by the City Council and approved by the DNR. The Detroit Lakes Development Authority also conducted numerous activities in 2019 and continues to assist Detroit Lakes in making strong gains in economic development and housing growth. The Development Authority and the City Council continue to emphasize housing as a key element in the growth and economic expansion of the city. A housing study commissioned several years ago by the Housing Authority and the Development Authority and updated in 2018 has spurred development of over 313 family living units in the city over the past 6 years. Our city's entirely volunteer fire department continues to provide professional fire protection services to the city of Detroit Lakes and to the surrounding townships of Detroit, Lakeview, and Erie. Our department currently stands at 23 firefighters and looks to establish a full roster of 30 firefighters this coming year, as you heard the chief explain this evening. In 2019, the fire department responded to 259 calls for service, along with engaging in 2,000 hours of training and other community activities. The city police department, with 17 sworn officers, also saw another busy year in 2019, responding to 13,565 calls for service, which is an increase of 1,428 calls over the previous year. The department continued to engage in extensive training this past year, including first aid, CPR, opioid overdose, critical incident stress management, and other training activities including new equipment and technologies, all of which are designed to bring the department into its best tactical readiness possible. And as Vice Mayor Zeman mentioned tonight, the chief will tell us a little bit more in detail about his report next month. The Public Works Department, with 20 full-time and 18 part-time employees, kept the city and the numerous facilities it oversees looking great this past year. One area in which we can all be proud of is the fact that Detroit Lakes has 320 acres of parkland, and each year we continue to add and expand our multi-use trail system. A new park is planned to begin this year on the South Shore, as we heard this evening. The new park will include bathrooms, trails, parking, and other park amenities, and will be developed over the next coming years by the Park Board. The North Tower Road Trail was expanded this past year, increasing our internal trail route to over 21 miles. And construction has begun on the Heartland Trail between Detroit Lakes and Frazee, and more work to be scheduled for this summer. In terms of water quality stewardship this past year, our Public Works Department completed 5,600 miles of street sweeping, removing 3,496 yards of debris and pollutants, and maintains over 100 stormwater treatment ponds in the city, together preventing harmful pollutants from entering our lakes and waterways. The City Council adopted the Green Step City program in August of last year, and the implementation of this program will provide more and better stewardship to our land and waterways and increase energy efficiency, along with numerous other benefits. Several large road construction projects were substantially completed last year. And these include the entire length of West Avenue, Willow Street from Washington Avenue to Jackson Avenue, and Randolph Road from Chris Street to County Road 54. Final asphalt paving and landscaping will be completed this spring. And I was going to talk a little bit about the public utilities, but Vernell kind of stole my thunder there, which was great. Good stuff, Vernell. I did want to mention that I was present when the governor was here, along with Laura Bishop, who's the commissioner of the Office of Management and Budget, and also Myron Franz, who's the Laura's the MPCA commissioner, and Myron Franz is the commissioner of the Office of Management and Budget. And they were all very impressed with the quality of water that we're going to produce. And they also mentioned that Detroit Lakes will be a template for future systems built in other cities in Minnesota, so that was good to hear. But the utility was also busy on the electrical side with relocation of infrastructure to facilitate expansion of the airport, completion of underground electrical in the North Long Lake annexation area, parking lot lighting and new electrical for the Boys and Girls Club facility, along with numerous other infrastructure projects and business expansions. Utility staff have also been busy preparing for the new automated meter reading system that will start this year. Can't be getting to the end this fast. There must be a missing page. So as I conclude this evening, here's some things that we can look forward to in 2020 and beyond. The City Council has been budgeting for several years to construct a very much needed new public works facility to be located on North Tower Road. This project is tentatively scheduled now for 2021. In a joint application with Becker County, the Washington Avenue from Willow Street to North Shore Drive will be reconstructed, and you heard that report this evening from City Engineer John Pratt. The City Council approved a $450,000 commitment to the new proposed Becker County Museum. Fundraising and legislative fund requests are ongoing for that project, and the facility is planned to be built with a connection to the Detroit Lakes Community and Cultural Center. The Detroit Mountain Recreation Area is expanding with new trails, parking lot improvements, and playground facilities, all slated for completion this spring. Reconstruction of Westlake Drive from Legion Road to County 6 is still planned for this summer, I believe. John?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
hopefully.
Well, we'll see.
This is a joint project with the City of Detroit Lakes and Becker County. And this project is vitally important as it will help prevent untreated stormwater from entering Detroit Lake. And it will also eliminate the tremendously dangerous situation for pedestrians and bicyclists along the corridor. So I hope that comment helps in some way as we move forward with that project. 2019 was another exciting and productive year in Detroit Lakes, and I want to thank our citizens, businesses, and industries for all that they do for Detroit Lakes. And thank you to our advisory boards and commissions who work behind the scenes and help the city council in making vital decisions for our city's future. And to all the Detroit Lakes City employees, thank you for all your good work this past year. You are the professionals that keep our city functioning efficiently, and who not only serve our citizens, but equally important, make our city appealing to our visitors. Finally, to the City Council and the Vice Mayor Zeman, thank you from all the citizens of Detroit Lakes for your service, leadership, and accomplishments in 2019. It's an honor to work with you and for you, and I look forward to a great 2020 as we make Detroit Lakes a better place to live, to work, and to visit. Thank you. And with that, the meeting is adjourned.